Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today's going to be another Age of Sigmar, my thoughts on. And today I want to do a video directly addressing a question that somebody's put to me over the past week about getting started with Age of Sigmar 2. The question in particular pertains to battalions, so I'm going to go on about that quite a bit in the video, but I want to talk generally about getting started in AOS 2 because obviously a lot of people are getting started in AOS 2. With the new edition, it's now about 3 weeks old at this point, and with the Nighthaunt, a brand new army on the scene, and the Stormcast being massively reinforced, there are a lot of people who will be getting into the game around this time because, quite frankly, is no better time to ride the hype train. So, I thought today I'd do a little bit of help for you to get started, different methods you can take to get going with your armies and get them up to where you want them to be. Because there's many different approaches you can take, and all of them have their ups and downs. So we'll go through them today. Method 1 is very, very simple. It is get what you want as you want it. It's quite a simple thing. It's the open play option in many ways. You see a unit, you think that unit's cool, you buy that unit, you put it in your army. Super simple, super easy, works every time because you get models, only models that you like. You get the models that you like, you use them in games and you want to use them, it's perfect. That is really good as a collector and as a casual open play gamer. So if you're just wanting to play quick throwaway games or games where you're not going to use the matched play limitations, that's a good method to use. You get to use the army that you like, the models that you like, and there's no restriction on you doing so. However, that does come with a downside, sorry about that. That does come with a downside, it comes with two. The first is you might not be able to fill matched play restrictions. So if you are going to play a pitched battle using pitched battle profiles, points, and the force org, I never know what to call that thing, the what you can take chart, the force augurs is probably the best summary, you might not fit those restrictions. You might have too many heroes for a given points cost. You might have not enough battle line. You might have too many behemoths, or whatever it so happens to be, you might not fit the limits at those sizes. And the second downside to that option is synergy. Age of Sigmar is a game that basically built itself off of synergy. Synergy is huge in this game. If you play an army like Khorne, you'll know what I mean. You play an army like Nighthaunt, you probably know as well. You play Daughters of Cain, you definitely know what I mean. You need synergy in a lot of armies, so just buying what you want when you want because it looks cool does not necessarily give you that synergy to allow you to bring your army up to the next level and win games against properly built armies. I realise that I'm being quite derogatory to that method, and there's nothing wrong with that method, but as somebody who plays with points and pitched battle, it's not a method I can recommend unless you keep pitched battles in the back of your mind whilst you're doing it. The second option is to build to a points limit. This is basically taking the buy what you want method and applying it to the pitch battle formula. So you might say, I want to get a 2,000 point army of X. So you draft up a list of what you'd want to use and you think, okay, I need this many battle line, I'm allowed these many heroes, this much artillery, etc, etc, etc. What can I get for that? And you build a list. And you create that list, you buy the units on that list, and you're done. This allows you to apply some tactical thinking to your games, adding in the synergy that you might have been lacking. And what it also does is it means that you can fill up match play games because you've literally built around filling up match play games. However, you don't necessarily get all of the synergy, and you are also restricted in terms of flexibility. So if you decide to write a list and stick with it, whatever happens, if something changes, let's say a unit gets patched or something new gets introduced or a new book comes out, you might end up having a problem and needing to reassess the situation. So you have to be flexible with this method, and generally this is not a bad method, especially if you combine it with the rule of cool method. So if you basically say, right, I want to get 3,000 points. Let's say 3,000. I know Battle Host games are 2,500, but I prefer 3,000. I want 3,000 points of stuff. So what looks cool, what's good, and what synergizes? And just go through it. So I need to fill out my battlefield roles, I need to create some synergy and think a little bit tactically, but I'm also going to buy what's cool. So you get to do all of those things, and while you might not get the absolutely super deep synergy of building a list specifically around tactics, you still get to appeal to the rule of cool and not paint models that you hate. Because there are some models that you just don't like. For example, I would never buy the Celestin Prime for my Stormcast Eternals. I don't like how he looks. Sorry, I just don't. I think he looks a little bit derpy, and he's not a model that I would ever add to my collection. The third method, and this is the main thing that the question was addressing when they asked me about this, is battalions. Battalions, for those of you who are new to the game or perhaps need a refresher or play an army that doesn't have many of them, are the broad equivalent to 40k 7th edition's formations. They are groupings of units with or without heroes that basically you put them together in an army and they get bonuses. So it might be you take one hero, a couple of battle line units, and something else, and you get a boost off of doing that. You pay extra points, but you get some extra special rules, or maybe just one special rule, to go along with it. So you trade flexibility for buffs. You also gain access to an additional command point for every battalion that you take, and you also gain access to an additional artifact and potentially other bonuses for taking battalions. So if you want to maximize the power of command points, you will take more than one battalion. If you have several artifacts in your battle tome, or in the realm artifacts, or in whatever book you so happen to go from, if you see something in there that you like the look of, but then you see something else that you think will be really, really useful, you take a battalion, you can have 2. You take 2 battalions, you can have 3, and so on and so forth. You get more bonuses for taking more battalions, but you pay for it. Battalions are very, very expensive. So, what are the upsides to battalions? Let's weigh this up, ups and downs. The upsides to a battalion are quite varied, in truth, because it will really depend on the battalion in question and what it takes to fill them up. So, on the upside, a series of units in your army, most of which you'd probably be using anyway if you're building around them, will get boosted. Whether it's through rerolls, through a buffed stat, or through some extra other thing, they get boosted. You get a buff on some of your units, and that's good. You get an extra command point. That's very, very good as far as we can tell. We haven't got the full shakeout of how powerful command points are, but it is somewhat telling that from the data I've been able to see and gather, the most powerful Storm host for Stormcast Eternals, or one of them, is one that gives you more command points. So, more command points is just good, because it gives you an emergency reroll, an emergency inspiring presence, on top of having access to your command abilities throughout the game. And if you're playing a narrative mission with additional abilities, then you have that in the bank, so you can constantly be using those abilities without impeding your own army. Or at least you have 1 or 2 in the bank for when you need them, which is very, very useful. You also gain access to additional artifacts, and in some armies, artifacts are ridiculous. Some artifacts are utterly insane, and sometimes you have more than one that you want to get access to, say 1 from your battle tome and 1 from the realms in Malign Sorcery. You can have both if you have battalions. It's really, really useful. And that's great. However, there are downsides. There are, of course, downsides. The first is the cost. Battalions nowadays, because of the amount of benefits they give you, often cost more than 100, 150 points. They are very expensive. So if you're taking 2 battalions, you could easily take up between 15 and 25% of your army, depending on game size, just on battalion costs, before you've even put a unit in your army to fill them. They cost a lot now. And it's up to you to decide, is the benefit I'm getting off them worth it? Is it worth taking the War Coven of Marathi, which has 4 battalions on top of itself, so it's 5 battalions to take that thing? Are the benefits that those battalions provide enough to justify costing so many 100 points? Is it enough? You have to ask yourself that. And in small games, well, the problem is exacerbated even further. Even taking a single battalion in a 1,000 point game can take away 10% of your army, 15% of your army, 20% of your army's cost can just vanish. So the units you've got, yes, they're buffed, but if you take it as a net cost, you can subtract 50 points for whatever they cost because of the command point. You might have 100 points that are basically sat there to buff your dudes. You've paid 100 points for one artifact and the ability to buff some dudes. Instead of that, you could have had 1 to 3 endless spells if you think endless spells are worth using or you're playing a game that works around them. You could have 2 or 3, 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 more command points that you could use to really maximize the unit's benefits, which might even be better than the buffs that you're getting. It really does depend. And the third downside to battalions is the absolute lack of flexibility, because battalions have no flexibility. None whatsoever in the majority of cases. Sometimes it will be take something keyword, and in that case you have a little bit of flexibility because you can take anything with that keyword. However, that keyword is usually quite constrictive, so it might be units of Kinrai Harpies, so you can take either Life Takers or the Heartrenders? Heartrenders, that's the one. Or it might be Bloodrack Medusa keyword, so you can take a Bloodrack Shrine instead. It's very small changes to a battalion. Generally, you don't have a lot of options in the units that you can put in. And the units that you do put in do not have a lot of options either. To go back to 40k 7th edition just for one moment, you could, in some battalions, take almost anything you wanted. You had to take a character, but you could jank that character out with pretty much any customization you wanted. Weapons, armor, additional equipment, relics. You could do huge amounts of customization with that one character. Just that character. To say nothing of the units within. So let's take Orc Boys. Orc Boys had 2 weapon options, 2 heavy weapon options, 2 different character weapon options at the barest of minimums, and an armor option. And a transport option. For one unit, having about 7 different options before you even get to its transport. So maybe 8 options on a basic unit. How many units in Age of Sigmar have that much customization? Answer, none. Stormcast Liberators have 4 weapon options and 2 special weapon options, which is quite good until you stop and consider that they're basically just inverted copies of each other that goes from 3s, 4s to 4s, 3s, and then you have 2 options, which is take paired weapons or take shields, and that's just repeated twice. So you could say that you've got 3 options just with all the stats swapped around. You could say that. Customization for units in Age of Sigmar is far less than it has ever been in Warhammer 40,000. Even the old fantasy characters who have yet to be updated, such as the Dreadlord on Black Dragon, have maybe 4 weapon options. About, let's say, 4. A lance, a sword, a shield, a crossbow, and maybe 1 other. So let's be generous and say 5. An Orc War Boss, a basic dude, could have 3 gun options, at least 3 melee weapon options, 3 armor options, another set of customization options before you even got to relics. You could do so much more customization with basic characters than you could ever do in Age of Sigmar. I took the best case scenario I could think of and then compared it to some random dude. I didn't even get to the bloody Imperial Guard Command Squad, the Space Marine Captain, the Tau Commander is horrendously versatile. Age of Sigmar just doesn't have that. So if you take battalions, you are losing out on so much flexibility and the ability to experiment because you're A, sacrificing points, so you get to the higher points limits faster, and B, you're also sacrificing in-house flexibility with your units as well. So you do suffer in terms of options because you can't just say, oh, this unit in the battalion is not performing all that well. What if I just take it out and swap it into something like, no, no chance. You can do that, but you'll lose all the battalion benefits. You'll free up some more points, but you'll lose all the battalion benefits if you do that. So, on your head be it. So, let's break it down then, and let's come back to the fundamental question about getting started in Age of Sigmar. I've given you the ups and downs for all of it now. And I think as a new player who's starting an army for the first time, battalions are something you should wait for. Battalions are step 2, maybe step 3. Once you've got your battle tome, you set it on your army, step one is getting the basics, whether that's buying a starter box, buying a start collecting, or just buying units. The first thing you need to do is get yourself set up. You need a hero to act as your leader. You'll need some battle line units if you're going for any match play games. And then you can just add units in as you like. Keep filling in the battle line slots as you get up to higher points limits. But generally, go with your gut. Go with units you like the look of, read your battle tome, what looks good in thematic synergy, what looks good in terms of gameplay synergy, and work from there. At that point, once you've hit about 1,500 points, 2,000 points, you can probably start looking hard at battalions. You can start thinking about battalions much earlier in the process. Maybe once you've got your first core units, can I get these into a battalion? How do I do that? You can probably get more options with battalions the further in you go. Keep them in mind as you go through the process, but don't focus in on them until you've got enough options to experiment without them and get a feel for your army without locking yourself into battalions too early. That's not to say you can't do battalions very, very quickly. That you can't start and say, okay, I want to just fill up this battalion and go. But you need to make sure that you're filling up your hero slots, you're filling up your battle line slots before you put the battalion on the table, or that the battalion you're putting on the table allows you to fill up those slots. You cannot lose sight of that, because otherwise all the benefits of your battalion when you go into match play are basically null and void because you haven't met the basic requirements. Honestly, it's completely up to you. In my opinion, battalions are not something you should rush to. I've got nearly 6,000 points of Stormcast Eternals, and the amount of battalions I can fill is about 2. And yet I don't mind. I'm happy building an army without it because I get a lot of stuff into my book and doing a lot of cool things in my list because I've built around my own narrative synergy and not quite filled up all the gameplay requirements to hit those things, such as the Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber. It is completely up to you. You don't need battalions, but if you do decide to look at them, they are worth considering. So, there you go. That is my thoughts on getting started in Age of Sigmar. So, different routes you can take and their various ups, downs, and options. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're a tournament player, did you start your army with the idea of, all right, I'm filling this battalion, or did you just think, I'm filling up this list? Did you go list fill, or did you battalion fill first? You can do both. You can have to say, okay, I'm going to write this list, and it will include battalions. You can do that as well. Just let me know what you think in the comments below as a tournament player, as a new player, or as an old vet, whatever it is that you so happen to be as a player, let me know your thoughts. And if you have any ideas of things you want me to talk about in my thoughts on going forward, do let me know, because this video came directly from a question from a subscriber. So if you have any questions, do let me know, and I'll see if I can condense them into a video for you in the near future. Anyway, thank you all for watching Tactica Imperialis. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all again. Bye for now.